Gents, I just want to pause the episode for a moment to let you know about the Strong Men of Value Academy. You will have heard me refer to it a number of times, and I want to bring more attention to it. So this isn't just a program, it's a life-changing environment and community of men who are focused on personal and professional growth. We're looking at areas of relationships, wealth, and health, things to help you thrive and maximize your life. Imagine having bi-monthly one-on-one coaching sessions with myself, weekly group coaching calls, and an incredible brotherhood of high achievers by your side. Now we're diving into resilience, leadership, and holistic growth to not just succeed in your career, but to thrive in your health and your relationships. Your journey to greatness, it starts here. So join the movement and you can apply for the Strong Men of Value Academy. You can head to themanthatcanproject.com to find out more.
Welcome back to another episode. This is episode 277. Now it's exciting as we're closing in on the 300 mark. I might do something special for it. And once again, for those who have been here since 2017 when the podcast launched, thank you so much for your support. For those who are continuing to join the journey, share the journey, and all those loyal subscribers and people who hit follow on the podcast so you get the first notifications when we drop a new episode. Thank you so much. It honestly means a heap to myself and the vision that I'm working towards. So today's guest is a great mate of mine, and he's actually been on the show before, back at episode 167, so 110 episodes ago. And in that episode, we spoke about nutrition for health and the man cave that he is running in New Zealand. So we've got Conrad Goodhew on. And today, Conrad is a dietitian. He works, has his own business, and also works with the Crusaders Rugby, which is brilliant. And today he's going to be answering a few questions that the men who are members of the Facebook group asked around diet and how it can improve. Aspects of their life, because obviously one of the most important pillars is our physical health, and that includes nutrition and our diet, because that can affect our weight and how we feel about ourselves, our energy, and a lot of stuff like that, and also help us achieve goals as we're thriving and working hard. So in this episode, we talk about when and what to consume pre and post workout, and obviously how to best aid recovery through nutrition, eating around endurance events, which was a very interesting one. We talk about fasting, 5 little / simple changes and tips that can be incorporated daily to improve your quality of life surrounding food, taking ownership, reviewing your diet, and just making small changes until you feel you are improving, right? And Conrad spoke a little bit about improving gut biome and all of the stuff around there, and finally how to figure out the best diet for you. So there's so much information loaded into this podcast. Make sure you grab yourself a pen, a notepad, take a screenshot, share this on whatever social platform you're most active on, tag us, and sit back and relax as Conrad drops a heap of knowledge around how you can improve your diet and nutrition. So this is going to be an absolute belter. And remember, guys, as always, if you want to continue creating momentum in your life, join us in the inner circle. Head over to the website, the Man That Can Project /inner circle, and I look forward to connecting with you guys there. Enjoy the episode.
You're listening to the Man That Can Project with Lachlan Stuart, a global movement created to empower men and open up what's really going through their minds by having real and raw conversations about life's unique challenges and our individual ways of processing it all. Welcome to the Man That Can Project.
All right, gents, welcome back to another episode of the Man That Can Projects podcast. I'm your host, Lachlan Stuart, and I am chilling out in the office today. And I was just saying to Conrad, who's back for his second episode, you're actually episode number 167, and we spoke about nutrition for health, and obviously more about your personal story and the man cave that you're running over in New Zealand. And I think we worked out it was like March 2020, so it's been almost 12 months.
No, pretty much. We got I was over with some rugby as a bit of PD experience, and ended up coming back straight into lockdown because I had to self-isolate for 14 days when we got back because it was right on the cusp of when everything sort of turned to custard. So
yeah, we had those
good times.
We had those nice burgers down at Felons there.
Yeah, that was actually my last takeaways for a very long time.
Hey, go out with style. That's the way to do it. But
that's it.
Thanks for coming back on. And I just want to, I guess, give a heads up to everyone. If there is a big amount of background noise today, I am going to mute myself whenever I'm not talking because someone is doing some construction here without a permit. And I was saying to Conrad, there's two things I could do. I could either get really angry, and Conrad's just like, nah, bro, just let's roll with it. So I'll do my best. But if I'm talking and it comes through, sorry. But also, this will be a belter of an episode anyway. So one thing we did, Conrad and I were catching up last week just to see what's going on in each other's lives. And we got to the point where we wanted to do another podcast. And we put some questions out to the men who are members of the Men at Can Project's Facebook community based around, some questions they have around nutrition and diet and a range of things like that. And we got a lot of questions come through, and we're just going to run through them today. I think, the reason why nutrition is such an important thing, it positively, and Conrad will dive into this, positively impacts all aspects of your life, from energy to mental well-being to physical health, to confidence to, all of these sorts of things. And it's exciting to see what the men are curious about or what the men would like more information about. And Conrad's going to deliver the goods today. And I'm sure everyone listening will get a heap of value from Conrad here as well. But welcome, mate. How you going anyway?
No, it's quite exciting. I was just talking to you before just about we've probably had one of the hottest temperatures here in about 30 years. So we're currently in Australia. I'm sitting inside with a heat pump on. So for those that are in degrees, we're about high 30s, which is Fahrenheit, sort of 9,500. So yeah, she's cooking. So I live in the South Island of New Zealand for a reason, and it's not for the heat. So yeah.
We love the heat over in Brisbane. We love it.
No, it's awesome. But other than that, mate, we'll rip in.
Let's dive in, mate, because I know you're a busy man. But one of the first questions one of the men posted through was when and what to consume in regards to pre and post workout, and then obviously how to best aid recovery through nutrition. So I guess I'll hand it over to you there.
Yeah, brilliant. So I think we'll start off just to touch on this nutrition. We're trying to get a lot of content into an hour here. So I will probably make it quite simple as best I can, just to make it palatable for you guys, to make sure you're not boring you either. But we'll start off with a pre and post workout. It's so variable. And I think that's the thing with nutrition. It's going to be variable regardless. You got to take into consideration all these different aspects that come up. So when we're looking at training pre and post, you got to look at what are you doing for training. So if you're weight training, you're going for a swim, you're running, you're biking, whatever it may be, you got to look at the intensity, because that's going to actually change what you're going to eat. And where that comes down to how your gut handles the food, as well as like what type of fuel source you want to have. So obviously, if you're going for more of like the low intensity, you might be doing some strength training, not too much conditioning component. You can actually eat right up to close. And this is where the misconception comes from. People go, I can't eat before training. So what they do is they eliminate all food before all trainings. Well, actually, in reality, if you look at it and going, if I'm doing a massive blowout where I'm a spewy type session, you might want to consider buffering that 2-hour mark beforehand and going for more of like a lunch type option that's got carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and veggies, I should say, as part of that. Whereas if you're doing more of a strength-based session, we can actually get food in closer to add in that other snack. Because if you look at it and you go for your strength training, you haven't eaten for 2 hours beforehand, you do an hour strength session, it's probably half an hour before you're going to eat. That's a massive window that you haven't eaten for. So if you want to optimize your training, exercise depends on your intensity. Obviously, write some stuff down and see how you feel based on whatever that is. And that can obviously change over time. So post-workout, sorry. All
right, sorry to throw you off track. So really that comes down to obviously, having a plan and being organized around that to maximize your training, right? Because I think that's, I took away, or I'm taking away a lot from that so far. I know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for me are my endurance sessions or my track sessions, and Tuesday and Thursday are my strength sessions. And I do often fall off the wagon with my nutrition, like just because of that same thing. If I know it's too close to training, I don't want to make myself sick, but then I get, midway through a session, I'm running, I'm depleted on energy. So is there any, I guess, short like snacks? Like, do you recommend having like a banana or a muesli bar, something like that, if you are even doing an endurance session and you have missed that 2-hour window to really get a nice big feed in?
Yes, the way I look at it is if you're training over an hour, you have to consider what you're doing beforehand. If you're just doing like an hour session, even if it's a huffy puffy, eating beforehand probably isn't as crucial. But what I want you to think about is, like, if you're doing a big session, if it is high intensity especially, yeah, absolutely. Small snacks like bananas, even things like sports drinks can be quite useful. I know people go, oh, it's got too much sugar in Powerade or whatever it may be. That's actually a really useful tool if it is something you need to fuel for and get through said session, especially if it's hot. And with that, I still look for fueling for any endurance or anything that's over that hour. I still fuel for that 2 hours. And if you are having to eat beforehand, you maybe not have eaten quite enough. Let's say you've got a 4 p.m. session. You probably want to look at having a decent lunch at 1, 2 o'clock or even 1 o'clock. And then that should be big enough to almost get you right through if you are someone that does struggle with gut stuff. If you're someone that can eat before session and get through it, great, practice that. But that's where I think you need to absolutely have a plan. But little small snack could be a buffer. But if you have a decent amount prior for those tougher sessions, you should be able to get through absolutely fine.
Epic. Thanks for answering that.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
cool. And post session, it just comes down to being on point. Now, with people go, oh, you got the 30-minute window to eat. In science, it's not that important, but in practical aspects, it is. Like I said before, often, okay, let's say you got 2 hours before, you're training for 2 hours, and then, you're waiting till you go home to cook your meal. Suddenly it's 5 hours that you haven't actually eaten for, unless you've been eating during, but still it's not a lot. So that's where immediately after you got to think of, okay, I need my protein sources, my carbohydrate sources, and my fluid. It's really important to replace whatever you've lost to get something into if you understand fight or flight, rest and digest, sort of kickstart those neural pathways. With that, if you're doing a strength training, sometimes that smoothie you can have before your training, if that's something you can handle, to recover pre-training. And what it does is, as you're stressing your muscles, and what happens then is you're actually recovering during that session. And then afterwards, you just have that meal. And that's where you can sort of divvy it up a little bit. Whereas people go, I can only have my protein smoothie post-session. Well, actually, depending on the intensity, sometimes beforehand might be quite useful as well.
Yeah, that's wicked. I was chatting to, this is probably how we got on the topic of having another podcast, answering some of these questions, because I'm really poor with my post or pre and post workout, supplementation in terms of like having protein shakes. And I know I don't eat as much as I probably need to for the amount of training that I do to recover better and to have that energy. So one thing obviously you recommended was for me to get back into having those shakes just for additional, protein and everything like that. So since we spoke last week, I have been having shakes every day and I'm feeling awesome. But for me, it's just easy after training. I like having a nice cold drink, and I just mix mine with water.
Nice. I say you're just doing protein and water.
That's protein and water, mate.
This is where, so when I'm walking to the professional environment, supplements is obviously a big thing, and it's easy to prescribe. And this is a challenge that I set these guys. I actually took away mass gainer for those guys needing to put on weight, because it's full of sugar and fat. So what I wanted to do is actually go, how do we create you getting your calories that you need without doing it through supplement form? What I use is protein, not as a core food. I use that as an additional to whatever food you're having. So if, like, let's say, rather than having like a protein in water, I try to get the guys to have like frozen berries there, peanut butter, oats, and making it actually into a smoothie and actually getting those nutrients back in the body. So it actually ends up being, rather than just like protein, get it in, absorbs, you're actually getting all the other nutrients you need as well. So it's going beyond just worried about that macronutrient of protein. We actually want to go, I look at it as driving the car. You put the fuel in, which is protein, carbs, and fats, which is your calories.
Yep.
And then you've got the other component, which is what's going to nourish your body or what are you going to do to look after your car, which is your service, your tires, your oil, all that sort of stuff, is all those other like fiber and vitamins and minerals and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that makes.
Yeah, you're right, and that's the way we look at it. And that's perfect. And when you plan your food, and this is, I think, something that I was going to touch on later. I might as well touch on now. Actually sit down and look at, okay, where am I training during the day, and plan your meals out around that. So if you're someone that likes to have 3 meals plus a smoothie, so that's like your, let's say 4 meals, you just manipulate your eating intake based on your training output or whatever that may be. If you've got double trainings or bigger trainings, you may have to consider more food around that. But that's kind of the easier way to do it. So personally, what I do is, so I like to train middle of the day because that's when I'm sort of quieter. So have breakfast in the morning, have my eggs, go through, then I'll have like a smoothie mid-morning, which is like my mid-morning snack. And then I'll be training around about lunchtime, and I'll have lunch immediately after. And I'll go on and generally have dinner. So I got into a pretty bad habit of only having 3 meals a day, but like you said, adding that extra one in made a massive difference. And that's sort of a non-negotiable for me now, is to get that morning smoothie in, which is, yes, it's protein. Yes, it helps my recovery, but what it's also doing is actually nourishing with, and I use a greens powder, I use blackcurrant powder, as well as all my berries and milks and bananas and that sort of stuff as well, to get my vegetable or my fruit intake up.
Is there a simple way to sort of find out roughly how many calories you should be having? I know we didn't mention this, but I just thought I'd ask.
There is. So if you're the type of person that likes to count calories or is like real into numbers, obviously there's apps that you can use.
Yep.
Then the problem is they often either under or over report based on if you go, I want to lose weight, they'll put you on a pretty significant deficit, or they give you too much. Also, the other issue with that is you want to start tracking your calories, and all you want to do is get under the number, because that's what we should be doing, which is not ideal either. But that could give you a ballpark number. I know things like body scans and stuff are becoming more popular. Yes, they're not overly accurate, but they flick out. We'll talk a little bit about metabolism. Flick out what they call a basal metabolic rate, which is essentially what your body requires based on your muscle mass, your height, and your age, essentially is the core ones, and whether you're a male or female. Yeah. Obviously got female listeners too, so this all comes under them. And then from there, that gives you like your baseline. And me, I'm pretty short. I'm only 170 and I'm 80 odd kilos. My basal metabolic rate's about 1750. And you see these diets that are floating around that are like 1,200 calorie diets. Like that's eating less than what my body needs if I'm in a coma in hospital. So you got to look at that and go, okay, cool. That's my absolute core. And this is where guys actually get it very wrong, because they look at their missus and going, I'm eating twice as much as my missus, but you've probably been laboring all day.
Yeah.
And then that's why the pie and V sort of options, and you go, they can eat, or they've got a fast metabolism. It's actually because their body requires a hell of a lot more. It's not because they digest food fast. It's just because they're bigger humans.
Yep.
And from there, you can actually determine, if you're an office-based worker, you times that by, for those that want numbers, 0.3-ish, 0.4. Of that basal metabolic rate. Obviously, if you're more active, you've got a tradie job, you could be 0.6 upwards at least. Yep. And then you tack sort of calories on top of that. I think there was, I don't know whether you saw my video yesterday that I popped up, the accuracy of sports watches in terms of determining your calories. There's so many variables in there that it makes it really hard. So what we've got to look at doing is go start off with a ballpark number if you want to track. Use the apps. They'll give you something to start on. Eat a little bit more, eat a little bit less, but your hunger cues will be your number one telling sign whether you're eating enough or not eating, or eating too much. And that's really important to develop or to navigate that side of things. And it gives you a starting point, but it's not gospel. I think that's really important to note as well.
I think that's important for everyone to...
Tangent.
Yeah, no, I think that was awesome. And I think it's important for everyone to understand, as with all aspects of our life, you can always get that, I guess, that ballpark figure, but then we got to sort of specify it for ourselves and, go off what feels right for you, those hunger cues that you mentioned. Just like we know in other areas of our life when things aren't working well, we generally get a good gut feeling around what's working well, what's making us unhappy, all of that sort of stuff. But moving on to the next question, one of the gents had in there was training for endurance events. I actually had a client message me, I think it was Monday, to do a 100K ultra. in July or June. I was like, mate, that's not very far away, really. One, I don't know whether I can do that. Two, I've got another goal for the track. But three, how the hell do you eat for 100 Ks? Like, I would imagine that would be a good 10 plus hour event. So I guess the question around training for endurance events was, or there's a few here, but what's the best way to avoid under eating aside from adding in another meal? Should I be looking to replace all the calories expended during a long training session?
Yeah, and it's a great question. It's one that most of my endurance athletes come to me for. And the first thing that I get is, I need to lose weight for this event. It's going to make me better. I can pretty much guarantee if you stay the same weight, ate properly, you'd perform way better. Especially for those ultra endurance events, having a little bit more muscle or fat mass can actually get you potentially through those, unless you're like elite and you're competitive. If you're someone that just wants to tick the box and get through 100 Ks, don't put that pressure on weight loss for yourself. And I think that's the number one thing for a lot of those people, or the weekend warriors that want to have big goals like that, which I think is incredible, and it's capable, you can do it. But take the stigma away from having to be lighter is the number one place to start there. So that's the first thing in terms of how to avoid under eating. Don't focus on trying to lose weight, because your training is going to be ramping up. So you want to make sure you're eating enough. The next thing is with the calories. Should you replace all the calories from that session? Now, like I said before, you can't accurately measure unless you go into a chamber, chuck a mask on, and it determines your input versus output. And there's a whole lot of technology that happens in the science lab. So what number to replace all those calories is arbitrary. Like we don't know. Like the watches can give you, a ballpark in terms of like, yes, it's more than the other session. But what they don't take into account is, what is when you train a lot, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, i.e. your NEAT, i.e. your step count, significantly reduces. Because if anyone's done a marathon or a half marathon, the next 3 days you don't want to get off the couch because you're so sore. Yeah. Same concept goes, your body's trying to conserve energy. So you go, oh, cool, I've burnt 2,500 calories, I can eat that back. Your body's actually done really well to conserve that. So it's sort of it's a fine balance, and the number is unknown. But the key thing you need to start doing is like you use the Whoop, so you can actually look at HRV testing and looking at how well you recover. And there are some cool apps if you don't want to go invest initially in that stuff, because it is very expensive. But that's another conversation. But I think the key thing is, should I replace all my calories? You got to look at going, what am I eating before? How long's the training session? How do I eat during the session to ensure that I'm kind of fueling and topping up? So they say, 30 to 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour. If you're a dude, aim for 60. It's easy, makes life easy. But the key thing is, are you eating enough meals? If your training's between 10 and 3, let's say in the middle of the day, are you missing meals? Are you missing lunch? How are you going to make that back up? And you want to kind of try to eat. So if you do a big session, try to eat as many of those calories in that big training session, rather than getting, let's say you did it on a Saturday, coming to a Monday, and all of a sudden you're going to chew your hand off because you're eating, and then you overconsume there. So I think the key thing is figure out what hunger is, navigate that, and ensure that you go, okay, I've got a big training session, I need to eat more food, I need to eat during. What that looks like is variable, obviously, on a lot of different factors, but get it down on paper, write down how you feel, how you recover, and that'll be your best indicator of, replacing those calories. And if you start losing weight rapidly, that's your under eating, essentially. Or if you're feeling really fatigued and you can't concentrate at work, or you can't sleep very well, that's another sign of under eating as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And on that nutrition during endurance events as well, fats versus carbs, and is it possible to train to use either or? Like, is there a switch you can flick to say I'm in fat burning mode or I'm in carb burning mode? How does all that work?
It depends on the intensity. So personally, I did some ultra marathons the year before last, and I run off carbohydrates, so my heart rate is naturally quite high. There are other people that working in a lower heart rate phase, and that means they're using more fats for said sessions. In terms of becoming fat adapted, there's a lot of sort of anecdotal evidence out there, which means someone's gone out and become fat adapted and said, this works for me, everybody should do it. And I'm not saying it's it doesn't work, but it's very case by case. So I sat on a panel 2 years ago now debating the ketogenic diet in sport. For endurance-based events, there is potential for it, but at the moment we still can't say it's superior to carbohydrates. So you got to look at what you do personally and what you feel better running off. Some people like to go more fat way and get that in, but at the moment and where the research sits, carbohydrates are still superior, hands down. But if you're someone that can consume more food and more calories during in a race and handle it okay, that could be a huge bonus as well. So going beyond the metabolism of fats and carbohydrates, it's actually like getting the calories in that you can consume and absorb could actually enhance your performance, especially on, I've got 8 coast to coasters in my books at the moment. If you guys don't know the coast to coast, it's a race from the west coast to the east coast of the South Island, and they do cycling, running, kayaking, and some people do it one day, so it's a longest day, or a 2-day event. So it's pretty Google. It's a pretty
that Red Bull event that everyone is it Red
that's
Bull?
Red Bull Defiance.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's another one that's really popular as well. Coast to Coast is more well known in terms of like entry level. Red Bull Defiance is just another level. That thing's insane, which is still another bucket list thing that I want to do.
Red Bull makes everything insane, don't they?
Yeah, it's great.
On that note, what do you reckon of Red Bull? No, I'm kidding. We'll move on.
Want me to? I did my thesis on energy drink, so
well, mate, quickly while we're there,
mate, best pre-workout you can use.
Really?
Still out there, yeah. It doesn't have beta-alanine, but in terms of like getting a boost, you're better off taking that than pumping yourself full of like caffeinated, some like ripped freak or something like that. Just have a Red Bull. Oh, we've got V Pure here. That's my go-to as a pre-workout. Absolutely.
So even on that, I've never really understood. Obviously, I'm going into the gym and I'm definitely going to get my heart rate up. So why the hell would I take a pre-workout, which is really designed to do that anyway?
I think it's a great question. A lot of people rely on it, and I think that's where it becomes a concern. That especially if you see in sort of like the bodybuilding world when they're on severe calorie deficits and they have to use pre-workout to get through the sessions because essentially they're not eating enough, so they're going to feel like crap anyway.
Gotcha.
So I think the first thing you got to do is, why am I using this? If you want to come in, so I know that Friday night for me is like that's my game day session. That's where I want to perform. So I'm going to take caffeine because I just want all the cylinders firing. I don't want to leave no stone unturned.
Yeah,
caffeine is probably one of the most underutilized ergogenic aids which is out there, which will enhance performance, and that goes for endurance sports as well. But the thing is, people do rely on it and think they need to have caffeine before every session. That's this thing that comes into the motivation, and why I think motivation's bullshit, because you sit there and watch your motivation videos to get up for this training session, or actually naturally, yes, there might be some sessions that you really want to perform at, and there's other ones that you're just like, cool, I'm just going to enjoy the session, lifting weights, maybe doing a CrossFit workout, whatever it is. Focus on the natural endorphins that come from that as well. So that's where you got to look at it. Like, am I wanting to perform in this training session, or am I just wanting to be, just be here and enjoy the moment that I'm actually doing it? And then obviously sleep comes under that. Caffeine has an 8-hour half-life. So if you're buffing caffeine before a 6 p.m. session, it's probably going to affect your sleep. So that's something else to consider there as well.
Definitely. And let's dive into fasting, intermittent fasting. Now, I guess I'm really fascinated for this one. It's something that I've always been interested in. I had from about 2014 to probably middle of 2017, I fasted like a trooper. Like, I would do 60-hour fast, every fortnight. And I don't know whether that sort of fits into the intermittent fasting, but, people have the windows where it's like 16 and 8 and, various ones like that. But for me, I've personally, from experience, I really enjoyed it. I don't like the intermittent aspect. I just would rather go all or nothing. Like, that's what worked well for me. And obviously with my training intensity, I now I struggle with it just from an energy perspective. But when I have done it, I've felt mentally just fresh. Like, I don't do it for a weight loss thing. I just did it because I learned about autophagy and all this sort of stuff. So for me, from a mental clarity standpoint, I was like, boom, this is awesome. But I'd love to hear the pros, I guess, and the cons of intermittent fasting and your perspective around.
You pretty much ticked all your boxes of how exactly I was going to explain it, which is spot on. So the first thing you look at is, why am I intermittent fasting? Now, there is some research out there. Well, the key thing to, let's say, weight loss, start off with that. People do intermittent fasting for weight loss. Calorie deficit is the key. People sometimes don't like eating breakfast. If you skip breakfast, yes, you can overconsume food in the afternoon, but there has been some studies floating around that it does create a calorie deficit, which is fine and which is great. So that's where intermittent fasting could be used to create that calorie deficit. And when I mean by intermittent fasting, I'm talking about like the daily one, sort of like the 16-8, that type setup. But in terms of like the cellular regeneration side of things, there still isn't enough evidence for us to use that at that level yet. And that's the thing where you've said I've done the 60-hour fast, where evidence there more lies. We kind of look at it going, well, it's kind of that 48-hour plus area where we're seeing something, but we're not saying that we would recommend it yet, because it is still anecdotal evidence, and that's the thing. Like, how do we actually know? I'm completely open to it, but it wouldn't be something I'd go out and prescribe people and say you must do this. It's going to change your life or X, Y, and Z. But I'm not going to stop people from doing it. But when the intermittent fasting, in terms of the 16-8, they've shown that it doesn't really get that benefit. But there is the odd case out there, but that's where people, in terms of like blogs and stuff, will take that odd or sort of the outlier and go, cool, this is going to work. So that's the kind of way in terms of how intermittent fasting works. But the thing is, if you're someone who is trying to optimize their training, and especially recovery and essentially putting on muscle, intermittent fasting is not going to be your friend. And I've got a lot of, so I've got some boxes, because they obviously make weight, that intermittent fast, and others that make weight and that don't, purely as a calorie thing. But in terms of your muscle regeneration, you need to have frequent protein meals over the day. And if you miss a meal, if you're only eating in a window of 8 hours, at the moment, we still think that that's going to be compromised. So it's still a lot of unknowns, but that's where personally I stand on it, and that's how I'll explain it to my clients when they ask.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I really like that approach to things, because obviously, everyone's got their own stance on various things, but I think a lot of it comes down to, like you said, what's your intention for it? How does it, I guess, fit into your lifestyle, and how do you personally feel as a result of doing it? I also personally, once again, like the 60-hour, a sustained fast, just for the mental challenge. Because how often do you find yourself in a day-to-day basis where you're like, I need to eat? Some people, all they do is think about food. Right? Granted, food's awesome. But have you ever tried a sustained window where you haven't? Like, it shows you how mentally tough and capable you are to overcome something like that, where your guts are going, oh, please feed me, or your mind's like, please give me the burger. Like, wild.
But then you hit that point where all of a sudden it drops off and you're not hungry anymore.
Yeah, and you mental clarity, and once again, I experienced the mental clarity and all those sorts of things. What about eating before sleep?
Yeah, great question. Again, there's two ways to look at this. Again, weight loss and actually sleep quality. So obviously sleep quality is very important. Talked about caffeine just before. Eating before sleep in terms of weight loss, the thing is, people go, don't eat after 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. because you'll put on weight and everything will be stored as fat. The thing is, you look at what foods you do eat after dinner. It's not the ones that you want to be that are going to support weight loss, is it? So that's kind of the first thing in terms of that side of things, and eating before sleep for weight loss. But in terms of,
you're telling me that ice cream doesn't support weight loss?
Well, good question. Actually, that's probably a good way to put it. It does if you're still in a calorie deficit, but people, the people that I work with are not even close to being there yet. And I eat ice cream. I like ice cream. I like ice blocks. We have it on occasion, and it's part of our lifestyle because it's something I actually really enjoy. The thing is, it's like when people have it every day and they set themselves those precedents, that's how they often, if someone that consumes like a tub of Ben and Jerry's a night, and this is a real thing, like, it's going to work for you if you don't stop eating after 6 p.m. because you've cut out a massive portion of what it is. But if you're, general, average, or, I'll call it optimal Joe, is, ice cream could be actually a really good sort of add-on there. And if it's a social side of things, if you're going out for dinner and want dessert, great, have it. There's no problem with it. But in terms of sleep, eating before sleep, Case by case. I know personally I sleep best when I have mashed potatoes. I don't know why. I think it's the component of water to carbohydrate in that. But in terms of people say, oh, you shouldn't have carbs before bed because it compromises your sleep. You got to look at the type of carbohydrate. You got to look at like the volume of carbohydrate. And what I often see people is that dinner's the biggest meal of the day. It's been drilled into us from day one. So if you consume huge amounts of food, yeah, it could compromise sleep. Also, if you eat quite late, could compromise sleep. And there's you can see here, there's a lot of coulds in there. The key way to know what you should eat before bed is by writing it down and then actually looking at, well, how well did I sleep last night? And there is a free app called the Sleep Cycle app that you could download and use. It's not the greatest technology, but at least it's something that can give you some sort of feedback on how you're getting on. But something that can actually support sleep is definitely like heavy protein, so the casein protein. Some people use it as a supplement and like that as a drink before bed. Or you're having something like, or you're having things like Greek yogurt, something along those lines, potentially mixed with some berries as a dessert, and that could actually help you sleep at night too, just because of the protein content, which helps the digestion and actually helps recovery and that sort of thing as well. So it's still, when people go, you shouldn't eat this before bed because it'll compromise your sleep. Unfortunately, there's no hard and fast rule for that yet. It comes down to, again, how do you feel and how well have you slept based on what you ate before you went to bed?
Yeah, interesting, man. What about finding out the best diet for you? I've personally tried ketogenic diet. I've tried vegan. I've tried vegetarian. And I've tried all these things for a good 3-month stint just because I wanted to understand them for no more reason aside from that. I just wanted to know what it felt like for me so I could, I guess, have an understanding of what it was like. And I won't share my experiences with them, but, various ones, I've just gone back to just eating sort of what I feel like in moderation. That's what I feel works for me at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Good question. I could have a real simple answer. How do you know what diet's best for you? Write down how you feel, how you're progressing, make small changes. When we see dieting, people go drastic. Like, let's say we want to go low carbs, they cut out all the carbohydrates. And what happens is they actually reduce their calories significantly, run out of energy, crave sugary foods, which is a sign of hunger. And then all of a sudden they go, I've blown out. I haven't met the requirements that I need. I had like a half a chocolate bar, which has got too much carbohydrates. It's going to put me out of ketosis. Like it's the whole mentality that comes with it. So you got to look at it and go, well, where do I want to sit on the scale as an individual? So do I like more fattier foods or do I like more sweet foods? So if you like more of the sweet side of things, you might be more carbohydrate based. If you like more fattier foods, you might be more of the savory type based. It's kind of like work off a pendulum, and it's interesting. Completely plant-based, people have said, I've reduced inflammation, I've got way more energy, I've slept better. But then people that have done like ketogenic diet have claimed exactly the same thing, but they're on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Even the carnivore diet, right? Like people are saying similar things that I've heard, and I've never tried that one, but yeah.
Yeah, so I am working with a couple of people on the carnivore diet, and it is for a very short amount of time that people that I'm working for, because it is performance based, and being a carnivore diet, unfortunately, isn't a performance type diet. But again, it's an extreme that someone's come up with, and you can tell yourself anything, and it's going to make you feel better. And there is it's the placebo effect, and that's where they've given people pills and they've told them it's going to do something where it actually hasn't. It's a beautiful thing. Same goes kind of with dieting as well. But the key thing is when people diet, they invest in their food. So they actually give a shit about what they're eating. They know what they're putting in their body, and all of a sudden it makes them feel better. So then they go, all of a sudden they tell all their friends that, I've been doing plant-based and it makes me feel 100 times better. That's good. That's great. But it's like if you come back and what diet is best for you, the one that you can still eat at the table with your family, the one that you can go out and have a meal out with a mate and have a beer and it not actually matter, the one that gives you energy during training, whatever that may be, that is completely up to you. There is nothing that is in a rule book that tells you otherwise. I think that's really important for you to recognize as part of all that.
100%. It really, one thing I'm starting to really gather from everything that you've been talking about, even from intermittent fasting to fueling yourself pre and post workout, all that sort of stuff, is like you take ownership and you just start really logging things so you gain a greater understanding about, what you're eating, when you're eating, and how it's making you feel. Then you review it, and what you feel is not working, make some small changes until you start feeling good.
Yeah, and small changes is the key. Drastic changes is not going to be the end things. You might sit down and go through your diet and you go, okay, cool. The one thing I want to focus on is just nailing breakfast every single day for the next 3 weeks.
Yep.
All right, change that. Cool. Feel better, got more energy throughout the day, more consistent. Great. Awesome. Next thing I want to do, cool. I want to nail my pre-exercise food. Great. That's the way. And then just take it step by step. And it comes back to Atomic Habits, James Clear, about just creating those small steps and actually continuing to do them until it actually becomes something that you don't even have to think about anymore.
That's perfect.
And that's what with anything.
100%. What about, I guess, one of the other questions one of the lads had was, what are 5 little / simple changes or tips that can be incorporated daily to improve your quality of life surrounding food? That's a brilliant bloody question, actually.
It's a fantastic. I love the scope of that, because it's looking bigger than that. So the 5 that I sort of did write these down, but I could give you a different 5 every single time I sat down. First thing is, I'm a big fan of front loading your food or your protein. So going bigger breakfast. I'm an early bird, so I like to get up and get into it, have a decent breakfast, start my day off flying. So, and that's worked for most of my clients. Not everybody. I'd say a solid 85, 90% of my clients get in to have a decent breakfast. And then leading in, making lunch as good as dinner. So getting most of your food, like I said, rather than going for a smaller, bigger dinner like we normally do, actually go decent breakfast, lunch as good as dinner, a decent snack there. Awesome. That would be the first thing to do, and try eat more in the morning, and you'll feel a lot better throughout the day, rather than getting home at 4 p.m. and not wanting to cook dinner, and then that comes with a whole lot of other issues. So that's the first thing. Second thing, determine what hunger actually is. So actually sitting down and going, am I hungry or am I bored? Or is this a habit? Like, what is hunger? So it's not waiting till you're going to chew your arm off before you eat. It is, and not, filling up like you got a smorgasbord of food. It's not filling yourself till you're literally to the point of throwing up. And it actually comes back to intuitive eating. So reconnecting with your body, and that's really important. So that's the next one. Determine what hunger actually is. Awesome. Number 3, fluids. Keep your water intake up. People often forget this. That's really, really important. And fluids doesn't have to come in the form of water. It can come in the form of smoothies and come in the form of coffee, tea. I'm not saying drink lots of coffee, but you can get it. You don't have to consume 3 liters of water. And that's the thing. There is no number of fluid that we should be drinking. The key indication for you to determine if you're consuming enough is when you wake up in the morning, what color is your pee? If it's dark yellow, if it smells, you have not consumed enough water the day before. All right, and if you're a heavy sweater, consider electrolytes. There's some good sort of sugar-free options there you can pop in your water. There's you got cold tea infusions if you don't like the flavor of water. There's heaps of stuff there that keep your fluids up, because often we mistake hydration and hunger and fatigue as potentially dehydration or lack of hydration. Yeah,
100%.
Okay. Number 4 is plan your meals. Now, I'm not saying food prep, put them into little boxes and take a photo and throw it on Instagram. Not about that. I can't stand people that do that, but people do it. And if that's you, absolutely fine. That's not my cup of tea at all. I like cooking food. But plan your meals. So at least know when, let's say you've got lunch out with someone that you don't need to provide lunch that day for the week coming up, or you've got dinner out that you're not going to have leftovers for lunch the next day. So at least you know what is coming up, so you can actually plan and structure your meals. And when you do have social events, kind of start thinking about how you're going to process, or let's say you're going to a barbecue where there's going to be copious amounts of food, start thinking about what salad you're going to take, because nobody takes an epic salad. And trust me, if you take an epic salad, people talk about it. And that's a really positive experience as well. So plan your food. And from there, it's actually being proactive rather than reactive. And you can plan your food and then you reflect on how that week went, and then that's how you develop moving forward. And number 5, and making sure food is a positive experience. That's just bottom line. If you're eating because you hate it, you're not doing it right. Simple as that. So, if you're not someone that loves vegetables, look up some recipes and try to cook it a different way. Okay. Disconnecting from social media, watching Netflix while eating, all that sort of stuff. Start to, if you've got a bar at home that you eat at, or you've got a dining table, eat your food there. Move, or if you're at work, stop eating in front of your computer. The problem is we aren't giving ourselves time to consume food. Like, it can be social with friends. Yeah, I'm exactly the same. We like to be social with friends, but make sure that it's you are connecting with what you're eating. And it comes back to that hunger, actually understanding what fullness is like, because you can consume huge amounts of food without you realizing it, especially if you're distracted, looking at emails, watching Netflix, whatever it may be. Okay.
Mate, the other night I had spaghetti, bolognese, and I was 100% connected to it. I was so hungry, and the bowl, and I had Parmesan cheese on it. My goodness, I couldn't stop telling Amy how delicious it tasted. I smashed it.
Yeah. And that's the connection that I think we've lost definitely over the last, from what I can remember and how we grew up. We moved away from the dining table, but we've brought it back, and it's been an absolute game changer. And it's actually better. It's been better for my relationship with my partner, because it's actually disconnected me from my phone, and I'm sitting there with her, and we actually have that conversation. And it's a habit that we do need to get back into and make regular.
It's a genius tip, especially for those in relationships. Think about ways you can get more connected with your partner. Like, don't sit down and watch Netflix, because you don't actually connect then. You don't connect with your food, you don't connect with your partner. So maybe encompass the both of them. Yeah,
because she's quality time, and I'm physical touch. So it's just about making, like, I could sit there on Netflix and have, my hand on her and be absolutely fine, whereas she needs my full attention. So that's kind of my way of getting that and actually reconnecting with her as best I can.
That's epic. So moving on, the final question. Now, this one goes over my head, so I'm hoping I can understand it through you. But what foods should be prioritized for improving the gut biome and, past probiotics, with the aim of speeding up your metabolism? Actually, I'll let you take it away. Go.
Well, you're going to add something on there.
No, don't worry. I'm sure you'll answer it anyway.
Yeah, good. Okay, so the first thing is metabolism, speeding up your metabolism. There is a thermogenic effect of food, but it's actually quite smaller than what people perceive. And there is no real way you can speed up your metabolism as such. You can increase your non-exercise activity, which is what we call the NEAT before, our step count, and you can prevent the reduction in that by eating enough food. Yes, your gut microbe and looking at that side of things necessarily won't directly impact your metabolism. However, your quality of life will improve, and then they'll improve your step count, which will improve the amount you exercise and how good you feel and how positive you are going to be around food. And that's sort of ensuring that we disconnect and try to stop thinking that we can speed up our metabolism by gut stuff, and thinking about, well, actually metabolism is something that is sort of completely different, calories out, if that makes sense. But the gut microbe is a very important part. I'm not saying it's not. And how we do that, and it's number one thing is plant diversity and volume. So I know Australians and New Zealanders do not eat enough fiber, hands down. That's just the way it is. So we just in December last year, I'm not sure where Australia are at with it, but the vegetable, so we had 5+ a day, which was 2 servings fruit, 3 servings vegetables. Now it's actually 5 servings of vegetables is the recommended dose, with 2 servings of fruit. So that's increased.
Is that because the food isn't as nutrient dense, or why is that?
Well, it comes back to, we've just realized that we need to, you can't under-consume veggies really. And they, like I said, they provide all the good stuff to help our body function correctly. They keep us fuller for longer with the fiber. There is potentially the lack of nutrients. However, farmers, especially in our countries, yes, they use the same soil, but they add the nutrients back into it. And some people think that's a bad thing, but that's in terms of the legislation and the requirements around that. Food is actually still pretty nutritious. Yep. So we still want to think about that and still increase our veggies. People go, we should have powders. Well, you're kind of with a powder, you're missing out on a lot of that fibrous food and the water content of it, which is actually really important.
Yep.
So, but going beyond just vegetables, it's actually all the other stuff with the more plant-based way of eating. And because that's becoming increasing popular, it's actually becoming easier now. And I'm not saying go in and get rather than having a beef patty, having your soy-based and all the rest of it based patties, or rather than having chicken nuggets, you're having your vegetarian nuggets. I'm meaning increase your beans, your legumes, your nuts and seeds. All that food is going to better the quality of your gut health. So the way we've got to look at it is, and probiotics can be really useful. They're still touch and go. Definitely in the sporting environment, they do help prevent upper respiratory tract infections. There's some good evidence around that. But the key thing is, rather than thinking of how do I boost my gut, it's just how do I support my system to function correctly? And it comes back to healthy eating. So the way we do it is we go, focus on eating plant-based, and then if you'd like to have meat, add some meat products on top of that. So it means you're getting all these diverse foods. So you go and get one of those flash rice bowls from down at the restaurant, and you've got so many different colors. So it's 3 different colors of vegetables on there.
Yep.
You want to make sure you're getting enough, as well as focusing on plant-based protein sources. And you can Google that, and that's the way you can get lots of diversity in there.
I like that, looking at it from a point of having a plant-based diet and then just add your proteins on top of that. I definitely don't have enough color in a lot of the meals that I eat, so I could probably improve upon that as well. That's for sure.
And that's where sort of personally, I'm not a huge fan of people go, should I prep my food? And if it's easier for you to do that, absolutely. But the trap you fall into is that you have the same thing for 5-6 meals per week.
Yeah.
And but we've got the fortunate, I know you got HelloFresh over there, which we've got here. Those sort of food boxes and stuff can actually be really useful in terms of diversifying the type of food that you have, especially if you're not confident with cooking. Yep. So that's a way you can develop that strategy, and that's a way that you can actually get, good quality food and actually feel a lot better doing it, and you're learning stuff and skills along the way.
That's awesome. That you absolutely nailed that. Was there anything else you feel would add value that wasn't necessarily after you blew those out of the water?
Yeah, Pedro's got a couple here. I just want to just touch on testosterone, just because I'm looking to do a lot more in this space. So I refer on to this awesome lady who I work with here. She focuses on fertility health for females, and she keeps telling me there's no fertility health for males. There's nothing here. And when you look at it, females are extremely complex and males are very simple in terms of the way our hormones function in our body.
Yep.
And actually, just touching on that, dudes, if you've got a female partner, actually start to understand the menstrual cycle if she's someone that's off contraception, and be there for her. So I hope Jess, I'm pretty sure she hopefully she doesn't listen, but she gets PMS pretty bad, and I can pretty much pick when she is in a menstrual cycle, based on her mood and how she's sort of reacting to certain things.
Yep.
But we're open and honest about that, and I think it's fantastic in terms of us understanding each other. So just on that side of things, females are very complex, so males are actually quite simple. And the thing is, we get caught up with sort of that gym bro mentality of boosting testosterone. Now, all the guys that are talking about boosting testosterone are probably guys that are sticking stuff in their ass. So before we dive into that, I think the easiest thing to do is there a legitimate way to boost testosterone? You basically need to take gear if you want to do it and boost testosterone, but you don't want to do that because that's going to have negative effects in the future. So the way we think and look about testosterone is about how do we function or help the body function correctly. And the way you do that is eat good food, eat enough, exercise regularly, but also not too much. So don't overtrain, reduce your stress, and increase the quality of your sleep. Okay. Those are the things that are going to support your testosterone and your natural body functions. So rather than thinking of it as I need to boost my testosterone because X, Y, and Z, it just comes back to the quality. And unfortunately, as human beings, we like to find the easiest way to get to a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't learn anything, and that's where we run away from uncomfortable things. So we need to get comfortable with nailing those things, and that comes into just living a better quality of life. And that will, I don't use the word boosting testosterone, will definitely support your testosterone production and how that looks, for sure.
That's epic.
And that's your starting point.
It's definitely something because it's the statistics like once we reach the age of 29 to 30, around that ballpark, our testosterone starts declining by I can't remember the statistics. You probably could help that out. It was like 10% every decade or something like that.
Yeah, but remember, we're basing that off data from the generation before us who were probably smoking and drinking.
Yep.
And probably sitting on their ass, got beer bellies, just not living happy. You look at all the healthy 50 and 60-year-olds out there, they're absolutely loving life. They're fit. They do stuff. They might be still running. They might be doing exercise the best they can. Their mood's really good. And you could probably look at that. And I'd love to see studies on guys like that in particular and see where their testosterone levels are looking at.
Definitely.
Yeah. So absolutely. And I think there is scope for low testosterone. There are things we can do around that for sure. There's supplements. There's you go see your GP, there's medication, you can look into that. However, I think we put too much pressure on testosterone specifically in terms of how to boost it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the dog awake?
Oh, did you hear it? Yeah. He just had a bad dream, I think. He was running, either chasing a rabbit or running away from one. Not sure yet. We've got a little 14-week-old puppy I've got to be home for. That's cute. Cool. Definitely. Awesome. I think that's probably it.
Where can people find you if they want to? I know we covered a hell of a lot of stuff. You covered a hell of a lot of stuff there for all of us. So where can people find you, Conrad, if they want to reach out to you and have some of this sort of stuff implemented for their specific lifestyle, I guess, and their goals?
Yeah, nice. So I'm Instagram is an easy way, obviously. Do a little bit on Facebook, but it's pretty much just copy and paste what I do on Instagram. So other than that, I'm sort of working on my own podcast, but that's obviously with life at the moment, it's just about prioritizing what I need to do, and my clients come first. So it's about getting spare time for that sort of stuff too. And I'm sure
100%.
You're well aware of that. But yeah, definitely Instagram is the best way to go. My website is Conrad Goodhew. So Goodhew's GOODHEW.com. Yeah. And you'll just jump on there. That's my website. There's and for sort of the Man That Can listeners, and if you go, I've met you through Lachlan or whatever it was, flip me a message, and I'll do some reduced rates for you guys as part of my sort of affiliate type program. So
epic. I'll put for those listening, this will all be in the show notes, so you can click on Conrad's website, or you can slide into his DMs on Instagram and make sure you mention you listen to this episode and jump on through there. Just writing that down. But finally, I guess, guys, the reason why nutrition, I believe massively in nutrition and understanding it, but I feel for myself personally, one thing I've done since about 2014 is understand how food makes me feel, as much as alcohol, desserts, breakfast, all those sorts of things, because I'm very in tune with the fact that I don't want to feel sluggish throughout the day. So I know foods that make me feel sluggish and foods that make me feel good, the importance of hydration and the importance of having a balanced lifestyle with your food and being able to enjoy things. Because I did have it was during that period where I was fasting, where I said no to so many things, and I just would sit at the dinner table. Everyone was eating all these delicious foods, and I was just like, nah, doesn't align with what I want. And knowing what I know now, I think it's important to understand all of that, and it really helps with your overall mental well-being and quality of life. So just like with all of the 8 areas that we love having guests on to discuss and share tools and strategies and information around, this one's equally as important to nail to improve your physical well-being, which will have a positive ripple effect into all other aspects of your life. And that's that.
Absolutely nailed it. And I think that's the number one thing, guys, and girls who are out there, you know your body better than anyone else. We can help you. We can answer potentially some of those curly questions. But at the end of the day, you got to look at what makes you feel really good. And that's everything. That's not only physically, but it's emotionally, spiritually, And yeah, really, really important.
Well, appreciate your time, mate. And I'm sure a lot of the guys will reach out and, we'll have this episode and more to come. Thank you so much. Gents, what an incredible episode. Make sure you, if you haven't already, you hit the subscribe button or the follow button, share it. And if you've got an extra 90 seconds, please leave a review. It'd mean the world to me if you could leave a review and leave your feedback on the shows. Stay tuned for another episode coming out this week and some brilliant guests moving forward. Now, if you have some people in your life or some people that you follow that you think would be incredible guests and provide value for our community of men, please slide into my DMs or put them forward. I'd love to interview some incredible people out there who are providing tools, perspectives, and knowledge to help men take their life to that next level. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening to the Man That Can Project podcast. My name is Lachlan Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. If you did, please take a moment to rate and review the Man That Can Project on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our newest episodes. We'll see you again next time.